Good morning, everyone, especially to our dear students who are most probably having a roller coaster ride emotionally due to the COVID-related uncertainties every single day. But don't be so worried because our university is doing her best to somehow prepare us for the new normal. And before I go further, allow me to congratulate our teachers for having survived the series of webinars the past few weeks. Also, credit goes to the brains and organizers behind the success, headed by our dear university president, Dr. Cecilia N. Gascon. And having said so, the job is only half done, and we are now about to complete the task as we hold this webinar, specially designed for all of you out there, our dear students. We hope that you have prepared for this webinar because we are given very little options to get our life back in the face of this pandemic. And this is our way of showing you that your welfare, our dear students, is a top priority of the university. I am Francesca Dian Magbayo, your moderator for this webinar entitled New Normal Education is for Real. And throughout this session, you will get insights from our expert lecturer and draw tips on how to adapt to the changing situations and prepare yourselves as you return to the campus, of course, once permitted. The objective of this webinar rather is to inform you of the shift of learning from public to personal space, and will also guide you in the possible role of the entire household as a learning facilitator and guidance provider as well. And of course, to prepare you for the new normal shift of learning modalities. Also, if you have any questions about the webinar, please feel free to type in the comment box with your name, course, campus where you study, and also a gentle reminder for our students to please refrain from posting unnecessary comments because any unnecessary, lewd, and offensive comments are being recorded together with your names. So much of that, let us settle down as we offer this webinar to God Almighty in a prayer, to be followed, of course, by the singing of the Philippine National Anthem and the BulSU hymn.
Amen. mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiliw, kaya sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dilim mo'y buhay. Upang hinirang, kuyagan ang magiting, sa manlulubing, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatang tulog sa simoy at sa langit ang wagaw, ay hinanang tulang awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang lang matawag mo'y natunay na nag-iinip, pangituwing at araw na kailan pang ay magdidinig. Lupan ang araw ng maraming pagsintaw, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang ibigaya ng pagkay magamin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
At this point, let us hear a message from our Chancellor for External Services, Dr. Reynaldo S. Nagit.
Magandang tanghali sa inyo lahat. Sa ating itinatanging tagapagsalita, Dr. Alejandro Bernardo ng University of Santo Tomas, sa ating mahal na Pangulo, Dr. Cecilia Gascon, sa mga nagtataguyod ng mahalagang gawain ito para sa ating mag-aaral, ang tanggapan ng pangalawang Pangulo for Academic Affairs at ang kanyang mga kasama, Dr. Ed Santos, ang technical committee na pinangungunahan ni Dr. Magdalena Gatdula at ang kanyang mga kasamahan, sa ating masisipag na mga Vice Chancellors for Student Affairs, Vice Chancellor Gerard Hilario at Vice Chancellor Roy Celestino, Ang Saring Himig, napakagaling. Ang Besyo Rondalia, talaga namang napakaganda na pakinggan ang kanilang mga tugtog. At sa lahat pa na nasa likod nito ay magandang hapon sa inyo. Isang pagbati, mahal na pagbati. Pero higit sa lahat, ang bida sa ating gawain ito, ang ating mga mag-aaral. Kamusta na kaya kayo ngayon? No, naiinip ba tayo sa bahay? Pero napakahalaga ating gawain dito. Salamat kayo ay dumadalo para po sa inyo ito. Nilalayon ng ating gawain na ihanda kayo mga mahal namin mag-aaral sa tinatawag nating new normal na talaga namang nagpabago sa paghahain ng edukasyon, hindi lang sa Pilipinas. At may mga suliranin na kaakibat ito. Handa ba tayo? Paano na ba yung pagtingin natin dito? Okay ba na eto't sa halip na tayo ang mga mag-aaral ay sama-sama sa isang kwarto, nagkikita, nagkakakwentuhan, sama-samang nag-aaral, magkakahiwalay sa kanya-kanyang tahanan, sa kanya-kanyang lugar, nag-online. Kaya may namamatay pa yung connection natin. Pero gayon pa man ay talagang dapat maganda tayo. Dahil hindi naman mabuti na ihintuan natin ang ating pag-aaral. Kaya tuloy-tuloy lang. Hindi na natin may babalik ang nakalipas na dati nga ay sa isang physical setup ay naisasagawa ang pag-aaral. Pero ngayon sa isang virtual space na tayo. Pero di bale, maglalaon ay babalik na ang normal sa lahat. Magkikita-kita pa rin kayo magkaklase, magkakakwentuhan na maayos. Pero habang tayo ngayon ay nasa new normal ng sistema ng edukasyon, kailangan iakma natin ang ating sarili sa pag-aaral na ito. Dahil iba na ang magiging pamamaraan ng pagtuturo. Iba na ang pamamaraan paano natin pag-aralan ang mga lessons na ibibigay na ating guro. Kaya makinig po tayo mabuti. No, maaari naman tayong magtanong, medyo mag-chat tayo, 'di ba? At limiin natin ang maririnig natin mula sa ating tagapagsalita. Tignan natin kung paano natin ito magagamit upang sa pagbabago, sa larangan ng edukasyon, ay nakakma tayo ng mabuti at tayo pa rin bilang estudyante ay magagampanan natin ang kinakailangan para tayo ay matuto. Yun lamang aking mensahe, mga mag-aaral. Again, kayo ang bida dito, makinig tayo mabuti at makiisa tayo sa mga susunod pa na mga pa-webinar para sa inyo na inahandog ng Bulacan State University. Maraming salamat sa inyo.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nagit. And I stand corrected. Dr. Reynaldo Nagit is our Chancellor for External Campus, or External Campuses. And again, I guess this first time for me is a valid reason for some jitters, but nonetheless, I do apologize for that. Dr. Reynaldo S. Nagit, our Chancellor for External Campus. Now, our guest lecturer facilitates teacher and student trainings, conducts research, and delivers lectures on English language teaching and education-related trends and issues across the country. He earned both his bachelor's and master's degrees from La Consolacion University of the Philippines and his PhD in English language studies from the University of Santo Tomas as cum laude. At present, he is a full-time and tenured member of the faculty of the University of Santo Tomas Department of English as Associate Professor 4. And a number of his research have been published in local and international journals. He has also attended trainings and presented papers in local fora and international conferences held in Hawaii, Oregon, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, Japan, and New Zealand, to name a few. He was a regional trainer for a Commission on Higher Education and a trainer as well in the Foundation of Upgrading the Standard of Education, or FUSE, and also in the Catholic Education Association of the Philippines, or CIAP, a PACUCO accreditor, And at present, he is the president of the Linguistic Society of the Philippines, or LSP. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our guest lecturer, Dr. Alejandro Sapitan Bernardo.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon to one and all. Let me just check if my audio is working, if my audio is good enough. Okay. All right, no advice that everything is not working well, so I assume everything is all right. To all the academic and administrative officials of BulSUan State University, to all the faculty members virtually present, and of course to all the students and even parents who are listening this afternoon, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Ako po ay nagagalak bilang isang Bulakenyo, isang laking malolos na makasama kayo ngayong hapong ito. I had a failed relationship with BulSU. Back then, it was BulSUan State University. I took up electronics and communications engineering for a year, but I had to leave BSU because I had failing grades in drawing, failing grades in trigonometry, and I also barely passed algebra. I'm very thankful to Mrs. Arellano, who gave me a grade of 3.0 after taking the removal exam. But I did not survive trigonometry, I did not survive drawing. And I realized that ECE was not really meant for me because since birth, I have always wanted to be a teacher. I asked the College of Education to accept me, but that time I was not given the opportunity to shift to any of the programs they offered. And thus I left BulSU without any ounce of bitterness, as I knew that fate would lead me somewhere else. And the rest is history. But now I'm happy, I'm really glad that in some little ways, kahit na sa isang maliit na pamamaraan, I'm able to reconnect with my dream college. No, ako ay kagagraduate pa lang ng high school sa Marcelo H. Del Pilar. I am grateful for the opportunity to share with everyone my insights with with the students, with the faculty members with us this afternoon, with all of you out there. I'm very happy that I'm given this opportunity. And a special shout out to my former teachers, colleagues na, naging colleagues na, and then friends. I've seen Dr. Laganao coming in, Ma'am Mary Bulaong coming in. If Sir Bong Kunanan is out there, a shout out to you, Sir Bong. And then my professor in the graduate school, Professor Bonifacio Kunanan. And before you stay away from your screens because of some household chores, that's life these days. Alam ko po yan, no, na virtually present pero later on physically absent na. No? Naka-on lang ang cellphone, naka-on ang laptop or computer, but then you're doing something else. Hindi po ako magagalit because it's part of the new normal. But hopefully, half of yourself is with me while half is attending to other concerns you might have this afternoon. And allow me to begin right away. Hopefully, my sharing this afternoon is worth your virtual presence, is worth the virtual attendance you rendered this afternoon. So allow me to share now my slides. Okay. Just give me a second, please. Sandali lang po. Just checking. Please let me know if there is something flash on your screen now. Okay lang po ba? Can somebody from the technical group inform me if there's something flash on your screen, on the screen, and if my voice is loud enough to be heard by everyone? Can somebody please give me a heads up? All right, salamat po. All right, maraming salamat. The topic assigned to me when we had an initial conversation, ako po at saka si Dr. Jocelyn Santos. So she asked me if I could talk about this topic, embracing the new normal education amidst a pandemic, and that the new normal education is for real. Initially, I had reservations, right? But after a while, I thought of saying yes. Sabi ko, it might be good if I could share my insights and experiences based on what I do, as a teacher, and now as a parent, and also as a lifelong learner. But forgive me if I would have to differ a bit from the topic given to me. I had to tweak it. I had to change some terminologies, particularly new normal. Although kanina, ang ating Vice Chancellor for External Campuses mentioned the term new normal a couple of times. Medyo may dissenting opinion lang po ako. So may disclaimer lang ngayon that I'm gonna be using not the new normal most of the time, but the term next normal. Hence, the title of today's sharing is Embracing the Next Normal Education Amidst a Pandemic, and that new normal education is for real. And I'd like to begin with some very important terms to define. Meron lang ulit akong disclaimer that the definitions I shall talk about, I shall present to you, are in no way scientific definitions, but merely definitions that are grounded on personal opinions and experiences. And these terms I'm referring to are the normal, or maybe sasabihin natin the abnormal, because it's not really normal, yung buhay natin before. And then we have the new normal, plus the now normal, and then the next normal, and the never normal. And allow me to define each of these terms, the way I interpret them from a personal perspective. So when we say normal or maybe abnormal, so this is the pre-pandemic life. No, pre-pandemic life, yung bago dumating yung pandemic sa buhay natin, where everything in our lives prior to COVID-19 took place, happened, no? And this is the life before the quarantine or the lockdown, our lives before the ECQ, the GCQ, the MECQ, kung ano pa mang siyang ECQ ngayon, ano? It's everything before all these. And this is everything which now sounds all too foreign for us. Parang hindi na nga natin alam kung ano yung buhay na yon bago dumating ang COVID-19 or bago dumating si coronavirus. Now, here comes the new normal. And I'd like to think that as far as time frame is concerned, the new normal is during the pandemic. Perhaps ngayon pa rin ito, nangyayari pa rin at the moment. But when we say new normal, it is a new way of living and going about our lives, work and interactions with other people. We are not, let me emphasize the term not, we are not yet used to. Hindi pa tayo sanay. It's the new normal at hindi pa tayo used to it. It's a new way of living, like what I said earlier, and going about our lives, work and interactions which hindi pa natin gamay, hindi pa tayo sanay. And the term new normal is a buzzword. It's a household terminology, but it is a highly debatable and highly debated terminology. Others would say that there is nothing new in the new normal. Wala daw bago doon. And the new normal is just a myth. Isa lamang siyang alamat. Isa lamang siyang kathang isip. Isa lamang siyang figment of our imagination, because our days will never be normal again. And I'd like to think that there is truth behind that assertion. Our lives will not completely go back to the normal. And the term new normal is a previously unfamiliar or atypical situation that has become standard, that has become usual, that has become commonplace, that has become ordinary for us, or something that is expected. But this framing, this kind of thinking is inviting because it contends that things will never be the same as they were before. So ano lang ang gagawin natin? Ano lang ang sasabihin natin? So welcome to a new world order. Yun lang, welcome, okay, to a new world order. By using this language, we reimagine, we rethink where we were before, where we were previously, relative to where we are now, and appropriating our present, the now, as the standard. Now, here comes another term, which is the now normal. Ano naman yung now normal? I'd like to think na yung time frame nito, it's also during pandemic. It's still happening right now, at this very moment. But it is a new way of living and going about our lives, work and interactions, or teaching and learning or education with other people we are now used to. Kanina ang sabi ko, we are not yet used to. But gradually siguro, a lot of people have started to get used to it. Hindi man lahat, but meron na, no, na nasasanay na. Kami lang dito sa bahay, unti-unti nasasanay with the now normal. And then eventually, we have to get used to what we call the next normal. Ano naman yung next normal? This is the while and the post-pandemic combination, a marriage of during and post-pandemic period sa buhay natin. That this is the period where I'd like to think that life will return or not return to the way it was before the coronavirus pandemic. It is the period when we deal with the shadows of COVID-19 pandemic for some or even long period of time. It's a mix or a blend or fusion of the normal and the now normal. So let me repeat, it's a mix or a fusion of the now and the new normal. So mahalaga lang na matandaan natin yung ano ba ang konsepto ng new normal at the next normal. But then before we proceed further, bago natin makaligtaan yung huling term to define, that is the never normal. Ano naman yung never normal? To me, it's also the post-pandemic or beyond the coronavirus epoch or era where things will be different. This time, things will be different forever. Completely, talagang bago na. And our lives will never return to the way our lives used to be. Now, why is there a need? Bakit kailangan? Why is there a need to define these terms? Kasi importante po sa akin na alam natin what it is that we need to embrace. Ano ba yung yayakapin natin? Ano ba yung yayapusin natin? Ano ba yung tatanggapin natin? What is it that we're going to welcome to our lives? Is it the new normal or the next normal? So doon po ako magfo-focus. So, do we embrace the new normal or we embrace the next normal? So let us now focus our eyes on these two terms, the terms new and next. What does each word mean? And if you look at Mogilonsky's 2020 definitions, ang sabi niya, new is static. New is static, walang bago. Okay? Walang pagbabago, walang bago when we talk about new kasi hindi siya ubu-usad. And I'll build the case to, as the discussion goes on. While the term next is always forward-looking. I repeat, new is static while next is forward-looking or looking forward. So let me expound on that. So, languaging ito, no? Paglalaro ng lengguwahe, paglalaro ng terminolohiya. When we talk about new, so when we say something is new, we describe something that is current, something that is contemporary, or present day. And what is new today might not be new tomorrow. It would quickly become old tomorrow, the day after today. A new car, for example, no? Bago yung car ngayon na binili mo, pero pag naka 200 miles na yan, according to automotive experts, luma na yan. It's not new anymore. A new idea, for example, a new idea or a new conceptualization is just new until it is disseminated or posted across social media platforms. Bukas yan. Yung sinabi ni Kim Chu ngayon, bukas hindi na yan bago, luma na. Okay? Cell phones, for example, a cellular phone today is as old as our great-grandparents tomorrow. Nakita niyo naman siguro yung pag-progress ng iPhones, no? Ilang iPhones na ba yung meron ngayon? Yung bago na na-acquire natin ngayon, bukas may kapalit na, bukas luma na. And this is precisely the reason why we look at new normal as something that is not really new. Because tomorrow, it's no longer new. Luma na rin siya bukas. But the term next has a more complex meaning. It suggests movement forward. It means that the thing, the person, or the situation that follows the current thing, person, or situation. And that's what our current state of affairs is because of this pandemic, because of COVID-19. Since the progression of the disease remains unknown, there are many more next normals in our lives. There are many more next normals that will challenge us until the virus is resolved. So, to me, ano ang mas mahalaga? Ito po yung aking proposition. To me, it is the next normal we should prepare for. It is the next normal we should arm ourselves for. It is the next normal we should brace ourselves for. As it is ahead of its time, it's forward-looking, it's future-driven, it's future-oriented, more demanding, mas mahirap, more complex, and it could literally be our second life on Earth. I use that as a point of comparison. Parang pangalawang buhay na natin ito sa mundo immediately after COVID-19. And the next normal in education, if we talk about education, may also be described as the post-corona education. Let me repeat. The next normal in education is post-corona education. It's not even during corona education. It's after the pandemic. But are we there yet? Nandun na ba tayo? Of course, ang sagot natin, wala pa. Not yet. But there are signs of the times. There are signs that tell us that our battle against coronavirus is progressing kahit paano. No, kahit paano merong pagtugon sa problema ating kinakaharap. But even if the coronavirus is gone, as what was aired earlier, our lives as teachers, our lives as students, your lives as students, as learners, will never be the same again. The teaching and the learning processes will be a way of life that is a fusion or marriage of the traditional and the non-traditional points of view or schools of thought. We do not foresee, for example, that we will just completely discard virtual or online learning after we all have been vaccinated. I don't think na babalik tayong lahat, may exodus from our houses papunta sa campus. I don't think it's gonna happen even if there is vaccine. Blended and online learning, as we will see later, are the way forward. Blended and online learning are the way forward. The coronavirus will definitely leave traces. May bakas yan na iiwanan sa mga buhay natin that are hardly indelible. Parang indelible ink pagka bumoboto. Hindi yan mabubura. These are ineffaceable. And one of these traces is remote learning. I don't think we're going to discard that right away, as I've said, as soon as we get vaccinated. So, what best characterizes the educational system in the midst or even after the pandemic? Ito po yung word, no, na naririnig natin ngayon as far as the realm of education is concerned. And that term is disruption. Isipin natin siguro sa una, no, ang disruption ay parang masama. Parang it has a negative impact when you say disruption. But when we talk about disruptions in education, not completely evil ang disruptive education. But we define first what disruption is. So it's a disturbance or problems in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, no, which interrupts an event or activity or a process. But Vermeulen in 2020 is saying it's not just a form of destruction, but it's a bit of creative destruction. Take note of the terms, no? Napakagandang mga salita. Destruction siya pero creative destruction. So when we talk about disruptions in education, it's not about replacing the low end of a well-defined product. It's about redefining quality, redefining education in a much more complex world of knowledge than that from which most current educational models were designed. And the quality of education is now disrupted, nagulantang ang kalidad ng edukasyon ngayon and redefined by the pandemic, by COVID-19. Therefore, the pandemic is a key player in the disruptions in the educational system. And these disruptions are a sudden break, as the meaning implies. No? It's a sudden break or interruption. And disruptive education, therefore, is that which intends to break with the established model, but with the hope, with the intent of improving the existing one. Yun yung positive side of disruptions. Yes, may ginulo siya, may ginulantang siya, but the aftermath of all these is improvement of the existing system. It's the improvement of the quality of education or the quality of teaching learning processes we have. And many experts think that the change is both necessary and urgent, talagang kinakailangan, because the current educational system is anachronistic. In other words, it is still anchored in the last century and is failing to address the needs of the digital age, of the digital learners, and the teaching and learning processes amidst the uncertainties brought about by the pandemic. I hope you're still there. I hope you're still okay. Now, ang tanong, how has education been disrupted? Ano ba nangyari ngayon sa educational system natin? Ano nangyari sa educational system ng BSU ngayon o ng BulSU ngayon? Ito yung pag-uusapan natin. And I'd like to start by saying that the pandemic is a stress and litmus test for the educational system. Para siyang isang stress test. Tinetest yung tibay, yung kanyang kakayanan. Para siyang isang litmus test sa isang experiment para malaman mo kung acidic ba o hindi yung isang substance. Why am I saying that the pandemic is a stress and a litmus test for the educational system? Alam naman natin what the Philippine educational system has gone through. It has gone through a lot of problems and criticisms. Ano yun? Quality of instruction, even budgetary allocation, affordability issues, dropout rate, mga out-of-school youth. There is mismatch between educational training and actual jobs, may brain drain, may social divide, may lack of facilities and teacher shortage, and a lot of issues waged against, for example, the K-12 reform. Kahit na ilang taon nang na-implement ang K-12 reform, hanggang ngayon meron pa ring bumabatikos. And now, the COVID-19 pandemic is another test to hurdle, another test to weather. And we have seen how the educational system has succumbed to the demands of the pandemic. Nagbaw ang educational system sa pandemic. Okay? But that bowing, as I've said, as a form of disruption, is not completely negative or evil. COVID-19 is an effective test of the quality of success of the educational system, its robustness and resilience, its ability to adapt, its ability to evolve, and its ability to mutate. O yung virus nga nag-mutate, so dapat ganun din ang educational system. Ano pa? Ano pa yung masasabi nating area kung saan na-disrupt ang Philippine educational system? not only the Philippine educational system for that matter, buong mundo, no, na-disrupt ang global educational system. The other disruption is that education may never be the same again. There's no other back to school time. No one will be excited about the usual first day of school. Tanungin natin yung mga estudyante na nandyan. No one's excited about buying new pairs of shoes, uniforms, notebooks, and other school supplies. What everyone is after is a laptop and or a computer. Dati ako excited ako bumili ng uniform, magpatahi ng uniform ng engineering. Ngayon parang hindi na, no? Because there's no other back to school time ngayong taong ito, or maybe in the succeeding years. Hindi natin alam kung kailan tayo makakabalik sa campus. There is altered and completely changed traditional practices. Maaring ngayon, no more magisterial lectures. Puro live streamed na ang lectures. Kagaya nito, yung webinars. No? Puro virtual conferences. There is disappearance of the traditional classroom stage. We don't talk about buildings now and walled classrooms. What do we talk about? We talk about a Google Classroom. Dati, ano ba yung Google Classroom? No? Now we talk about the cloud campus, not anymore Malolos campus or San Rafael campus. You don't talk about that anymore. You talk about the cloud campus. You talk about borderless learning, unwalled and 24/7 exchange of ideas. The other disruption is long-term remote school workforce. I'm sure nadama nyo na yung mga problemang kinakaharap because of remote school workforce. Teachers, staff, and administrators are all on work from home modality. At least kami, for example, sa UST, talagang all work from home kami. I'm not really sure. Siguro baka skeleton force yung nandyan sa inyong university ngayon na nagtatrabaho. And again, it's because of the COVID-19, which hit different areas such as the Greater Manila area and even Bulacan. I think ang Bulacan ngayon ay naka MECQ din. There is also migration from face-to-face to online school and office transactions. Paano mag-request ngayon ng TOR? Nahihirapan nga din kami dun eh. Ang registrar's office bombarded with lots of complaints. And it's because workforce is on remote or work from home setup. Wala tayong magagawa eh. Lalaki ng lalaki yung population ng COVID-19 patients if we still do whatever we did in the past. Now there is remote learning as another form of disruption. It's a household vocabulary. I'm sure pati yung mga lolo't lola ng mga estudyante natin, alam na kung ano yung remote learning. And this is where the student and the educator or the teacher or information source are not physically present in the traditional classroom environment. And information is disseminated or relayed through technology such as discussion boards, video conferencing, and online assessments. I do not know what specific online platform BulSU is gonna be using for the first term of the next academic year. But for us, for example, sa UST, it's Blackboard. Other schools or universities will use Canvas. My children, no, nag-aaral sila sa Google Meet, sa Google Classroom. So that's remote learning. And it can occur either synchronously or with real-time, peer-to-peer interaction and collaboration, or even asynchronously with self-paced learning activities that take place independently of the instructor. And I'm sure you're also familiar with these terms. I'm sure your teachers have already introduced these terms to you long before. But when we talk about remote learning, we also have to realize that there is an isolation. No? There is isolation of each learner in his or her own space, which drives teachers to unlearn old habits and acquire new skills of online learning engagement. There is virtual, digital, and automated education. There's learning from home mode, which abruptly changed the roles of teachers, students, and parents. Ako lang po hirap na hirap. First 3 days na klase ng dalawa kong preschoolers, hirap na hirap. Buti na lang nasa kolehiyo na kayo. You might be needing your parents with you to give you support in terms of instruction, but to give you support of other sorts, of other guises, shapes, and sizes. Ibang support ang kailangan ng nasa kolehiyo. But for preschoolers, Diyos ko po, talagang kakaiba ang aming experience ngayong linggong ito. Now, teachers and parents are co-facilitators of learning. They team teach, especially in the lower grade levels, like what I said earlier. And in remote learning, to our dear students out there, it's autonomous learning, which requires the teachers shift to be designers and facilitators of learning instead of being or acting like a sage on the stage. Nag-iba na rin ang roles ng mga teachers ngayon. And finally, there is blended or purely online courses as the default mode of learning. Online learning is now the name of the game. But let me caution everyone that online learning is not the whole story, but only an enabler or a vehicle for learning, for education to continue. Let me reiterate that. It's just an enabler. It's just a vehicle for learning. Okay? Kamaluddin in 2020 saying that online learning is not just online learning. It's not move it all online. Hindi yung parang itatransport mo lang lahat ng ginagawa sa klase, ilalagay mo sa computer o ilalagay mo sa cellphone. It's not that. It's a misconception. Again, online learning is not move it all online. If that is so, ano yung online learning? Okay? Ano nga ba siya? Sabi sa literature, online learning involves a lot of shifts. Pagbabago. Shift, for example, in terms of learning space, and kanina narinig niyo yan, yung learning space nyo ngayon, it's not a public space, but it's already a personal space. Kaya ngayon, maaari nyo nang sabihin talaga, I need space. Para mga sa relationships lang yan eh. Bakit kayo nag-break? I need some space. Ngayon, gamitin nyo yan. Sa pag-aaral, talagang kailangan nyo ng personal space. What does that suggest? So what this means is, instead of going to school and university premises to learn, learning now happens at home within our personal learning spaces. The transition of spaces has been happening since Web 2.0, or the second stage of development of the internet, mainly characterized by user-generated content on social media, because learning can now be done through our personal devices without having to go somewhere physically. Learning is there right at your fingertips. Kung may cellphone ka, matututo ka. And along with that comes a shift to our social interaction. From physical to virtual interaction. We still interact with the learning community we are in. We still exchange conversations with classmates, with teachers and lecturers. We are not cut off from the learning community, but we have merely shifted our communication channels. I'm sure every day, nag-chat kayo, nag-video call kayo, tumatawag kayo via Skype, what have you. Naiba lang yung platform. But things are like communication, like exchange of conversations, nandyan pa rin sila. The other shift is the shift of delivery. In other words, teaching methods from one size fits all to individualized and differentiated instruction or learning. What does this mean? Balikan ninyo yung nakaraang taon, yung high school o yung kolehiyo ninyo. In a typical class, di ba, all students will be taught the same. They listen to the same lecture, to the same activities in class, and complete the same homework or assignments. And at the end of the term or at the end of the semester, all students will sit for the same exam, departmentalized exam, for example, and will be evaluated based on the same assessment tools or rubric. But now it's going to be different. There's individualization and differentiation of instruction. Kailangan din nga sumunod ng mga schools sa directive ng CHED na kailangan na address yung needs ng 3 types of learners. Those with stable internet connection, those with not so stable internet connection, and those without internet connection at all. So hindi po pwedeng one size fits all. So individualized and differentiated instruction means teaching each student uniquely to meet the unique needs and paces. The academic goals may remain the same for the group of students, but individual students can progress through the curriculum at different speeds, at different pacing, and use different resources based on their particular learning needs. Kaya mahirap po mag-impose sa mga estudyante ngayon dahil kailangan nating i-address yung unique and individual needs of the learners. Mahirap, hindi ko po sinasabing madali. Bilang isang guro, ako din po ay hirap na hirap. Some students might learn better through watching videos, while some need to read a textbook. Hindi natin maaalis yun. Each student is unique in his or her way of learning, especially now when learning takes place in personal spaces. And the issue of accessibility comes in. Accessibility varies from household to household, and distributing learning resources can be challenging for educators. Kami nga po sa UST before, nagpapadala pa ng USBs. No? Yung para dun sa files, pinapa-courier pa kasi may mga naabutan ng lockdown sa malalayong lugar na walang internet access. Imagine that. Nagpapa-courier ng handouts, nagpapa-courier ng worksheets para lang makarating, para lang ma-access yung mga estudyante. And therefore, educators now can design lessons according to the individual needs, like what I've said, of the students, and give them the flexibility to master the materials accordingly. Flexibility. Flexible learning po ang name of the game then. Educators now consider the typologies of learners, as I've said, based on internet connectivity. Sana po nandyan pa kayo. The other shift is the shift of responsibility in the teaching and learning process. Now, there is active participation of household members. Si mommy at daddy nyo, kakailanganin nyo sila. I'm telling you, yung mga magulang ninyo, kakailanganin ninyo ngayon, lalo sa mga panahong ito. You have your own personal learning space. Kailangan nyo sila. Halimbawa, kailangan nyo paalisin sa kwarto. Mami, may lesson ako ngayon. Nanay, may lesson ako ngayon. Dito ako sa room, dito tahimik. Outside, di kulambo kayo. Doon kayo sa labas. That's how you need them now. Yung mga nasa college and high school levels. Family members become active agents in the teaching and learning process. The entire household can act as learning facilitators, providing guidance and assistance to make the learning process pleasant for students. Yung mga parents din natin dyan will be guidance counselors. Iba po ang virtual learning. Not everyone will be able to cope with it the same manner, the same way. At kakailanganin po yung support ng mga magulang. Although teachers can always deliver lessons and learning materials online, learning needs interaction with the physical world. Hindi pwedeng walang kausap yung mga bata sa bahay. Otherwise, they will be talking to the walls. Kailangan nila ng kausap. Alam, nag-aral silang physics ngayong umaga. Mamaya pagkain nyo, they might be talking about physics. So yung mga parents na nakikinig dyan, pakinggan nyo lang yung mga anak nyo because they need someone to talk to. Kailangan nilang warm bodies na kausap. And when it comes to the need for references to the outside world and physical interactions, household members need to play a role, showing real-life examples, giving demonstrations. Halimbawa, PE. Dancing yung PE. Halimbawa lang, although iba na yung nature ng PE ngayon, sino kasayaw ng mga bata sa harap ng computer? Baka yung lola niya, mag-cha-cha siya kung ballroom dancing. No? Kay Emil Cruz pa naman, ballroom dancing ang lesson. Eh, syempre, dapat may ka-cha-cha ka. So maybe yung lolo't lola nyo, no? Kasama yung ginigrade ni Sir Emil Cruz. So in showing real life examples, giving demonstrations, or even having simple conversations, household members need not be professors. Hindi nyo po kailangan maging PhD, mommy and daddy. You simply need to be present to facilitate the process. Hindi po yan kakayanin ng teachers. Hindi po namin yan kakayanin mag-isa. So there's got to be support from household members. Give students conviction that learning is an activity that is absolutely impressive. Hopefully, nandyan pa po tayo. Let me just pause very quickly just to check if you're still there and if you could still hear and see me. Anyone from the technical committee? Heads up lang po. Okay lang po tayo? Yes, sir. Ilan na po ba ang nanonood? Yung totoong nanonood kaya? Ilan po kaya sila? Can we check, sir? Can you give me lang?
So 1.5 thousand.
Akala ko 1.5 million eh, no? 1.5 ano, 1.5 no, 1.5 thousand. Okay. Ang nanonood sa atin ngayon. Salamat po. Okay. Let me now go back to my slide. Okay. The other shift is the shift in learning evaluations. Yung mga teachers po natin, hindi na po siguro uso ngayon ang paper and pencil tests, no, for the final exams. So from final exams to formative assessments. What does this imply? So sa mga estudyante, ito po yung i-expect sa ating mga guro, ng mga estudyanteng nakikinig sa atin. We often contradict ourselves when it comes to exams. We demonstrated when classroom-based assessments were introduced, yet we constantly criticized the exam-centric educational system. The next normal schools, the next normal education does not lead itself to methods of evaluation like final exams, as exams are laborious to manage in personal spaces. Therefore, alternative means of evaluating learning have to be used to monitor student achievement, and formative assessments like science projects, demonstrations, math challenge games, and traditional book reports are now more desirable means of gauging a student's learning progress. There is gradual veering away from paper and pencil test. Baka sabihin nyo, syempre wala nang paper and pencil test kasi online na. But we look at paper and pencil test as the usual multiple choice, the usual identification. Iba na rin, no, ang aasahan ng ating mga estudyante. And the purpose of evaluation activities now shifts focus from assessment of learning, in other words, grading, to assessment for learning. I'm sure alam na ng mga teachers natin yan na nakikinig ngayon. So shift from assessment of learning to assessment for learning. In other words, we use the results to know whether the intended learning outcomes have been achieved by the learners or by the students, or whether they need extra work to help them master a certain topic. Therefore, if we look at online learning, criticism about online learning is not addressing equal access and also quality education, but it is unfounded. Online learning is here to stay as it enables learning and is already benefiting millions and millions of students in schools and higher learning institutions. Technology will complement reality and opens doors to unprecedented and unexplored opportunities, making schools an immersive and accelerated learning experience, according to Vermeulen in 2020. Now, anong mga realizations ang pwede pa nating makuha out of this pandemic or out of the coronavirus invasion? May great divide na nangyari, na naging ang dahilan ay ang COVID-19. And this current global pandemic is an unforeseen event which has led to discoveries or eureka moments relevant to instruction. For instance, it is now inevitable to categorize both teachers and learners as may digital natives, medyo may edad na, pero it's not yet too late to learn the technology. May mga digital immigrants, yung nandun na, papunta na, no? O nandun na, although there are also digital transients in the middle. Now, it's usual to categorize Netflix learners, Google learners, and internet learners. Pagka sa bahay may Netflix, nagagamit na ang Netflix for learning. May digital addicts, may digital omnivores, may digital phobics. Meron pa ring takot, ayaw pa rin. May resistance. May wired, may wireless, may neither wired nor wireless. Mayroong hard copy learners, soft copy learners, meron din namang copy-paste learners. Kopya lang ng kopya. Meron ding slow connection, merong may fast connection, at mayroon ding disconnected or no connection, internet connectivity at all. Bottom line is that the great divide between and among us is made more pronounced by the pandemic. Mas lumaki yung gap actually between the haves and the have-nots. The pandemic has made unequal access to education more pronounced. Sadly, but that is true. No, totoo po yan, unequal access to education. There is perpetuation of the great divide. Online education is for the rich, and the not so rich do not have access to it. Bakit po? Walang pambili ng computer. Paano? And a lot of Filipinos have also experienced significant impact on their household income due to community quarantine measures. 38% based on the latest statistics, claim that their income is down by more than 50%, the highest among several countries surveyed sa Pilipinas. There are inequalities in terms of access to instructional input. As I've said, the affluent learners can readily afford online learning, while the underprivileged learners looks at internet connectivity as a luxury. Additional expenses po yun eh. Magkaanong babayaran for a household para lang ang isang household para magkaroon ng isang stable internet connectivity. Nagbabari din yung presyo, depende sa strength ng connectivity. But what if you cannot afford the strongest connection? That signals unequal access to education. So, bottom line, mga sinabi ko po earlier, 3:10 na pala. Sorry po medyo nasa kalahati pa lang po ako. Sana po nandiyan pa kayong lahat. The next normal in education, parang yung kanta sa Aladdin, it's a whole new world. It's a new horizon to pursue. It's a new fantastic point of view. But the good thing is, we don't need a magic carpet to see it. What we need is to do something about it. And how can that be achieved? The answer lies in innovation. Innovative approaches, innovative methods, and innovative formats. And why do we need to innovate? There is necessity, kailangan. And necessity is the mother of innovation. Hindi lang siya mother of invention. Necessity is also the mother of innovation. The global pandemic, degree of inconvenience. Wala namang masaya sa nangyayaring ito. Talagang everything is inconvenient. Mag-grocery ka lang. Pagbalik mo ng bahay, nasa garahe ka pa lang, maliligo ka na, mag-alcohol ka na, maghuhubad ka na ng damit, maglalaba ka na. Pag bumili ka ng groceries ngayon, UV light mo pa. Lalabahan mo pa pati yung delata because you're afraid that you might contract the virus. So it has caused a lot of inconvenience, but it has also prompted new and better examples of educational innovations. So there is a need to innovate. There is a need to change. But should this be our focus now? Maaring ang tanong ninyo, mga magulang o mga bata na nandyan, maaring ang tanong nyo, education pa ba ang focus ko ngayon? Wala nga kaming trabaho, wala kaming pampaaral, ang hirap-hirap ng buhay ngayon. Mas magastos, kailangan ng laptop. Should education still be our focus, knowing that we are in the midst of a pandemic that is unprecedented and a pandemic that has brought a lot of uncertainties right at our doorsteps? Tanong din po yan ng marami. So ano daw ba mas mahalaga? The question of what is more important, should it be Maslow before Bloom? May article po na yan na napaka-interesting na article. Ano po yung ibig sabihin nun? Ano ba dapat nating pagtuunan ng pansin? Hindi ba muna pangangailangan muna nating physical, pangangailangang pangsarili bago ang edukasyon? Should it be learning or food to eat, food on our tables? But the article is saying that Maslow before Bloom should be the new battle cry in education. Pero may iba na nagdi-dissent, may dissenting opinion, kagaya ko po. What was forgotten or considered late was the well-being of students who are now at home learning on their own. Sharing with you that article. The pandemic has brought anxiety to families. It separated parents who are essential workers from their children because of their fear of bringing the virus home. Some students are also grieving for family or friends lost due to the pandemic. Some parents might not have enough money to buy food and other necessities for daily living, which their children see and witness at home. I'm sure naririnig nila yung usapan na yan sa bahay. Moreover, the sense of isolation from classmates and teachers has disrupted the normalcy of schooling. And with the heavily charged situations, it's really hard to imagine and ensure that the students at home are ready for learning. Nothing will enter and stick into their minds now if they are hungry, worried, and anxious. And totoo naman po yun. Hindi ko po yun tinatanggi. I agree with that. And as a society of the different normal, we need to ensure that the basic physical, social, emotional, and psychological needs of students are met before they can even start learning. The schools, therefore, ito yung mahalagang role ng BulSU, mahalagang role ng educational institutions, should be able to reach out to and check in with the students before starting the class. Kami po sa UST nag-survey pa. Sino yung may strong internet connectivity? Sino yung may less stable? Sino yung walang cellphone? Sino yung walang laptop? True enough, meron po ganyang estudyante sa university. So the schools need to do something about that to help. Alam ko pong mahirap because it also depends on the school's resources. Schools definitely need more guidance counselors or life coaches to help students navigate their emotions and thoughts. More importantly, the school should give students the time to adjust to the new ways of learning. Kaya ako po, ang suggestion ko, maski sa UST, sa mga kapwa ko guro doon, yung unang linggo ng klase, hindi po muna klase. Siguro po kumustahan muna. No? Kailangan po nating matulungan muna yung mga estudyante to adjust and to adapt and to build better and harmonious relationships with everyone and with you. Schools should be able to reduce everyone's level of anxiety. Sabihin siguro ni Vice Chancellor, ang hirap naman ng trabaho ng schools ngayon. Yun po talaga no? Lahat po tayo, we all believe na the role of the schools these days has also changed. No? Even yung reduction of the level of anxiety, trabaho na rin natin ngayon yun. And there must be precautionary measures should schools rather opt for blended learning later on. For example, if schools opt for purely online learning, they should also make the learners feel secure and safe, from pandemic-related and online learning-related stressors. Kahit po sabihin natin, wala naman sila sa campus Yun pong student handbook applies even beyond the territorial boundaries of the school. Maliwanag po yun sa Education Act, sa batas. Yung policies natin nag-extend even outside the campus. So therefore, yung expectation sa atin, yung services din, nag-extend beyond the campus. Kailangan din nating ma-ensure yung safety ng mga estudyante. Data privacy, for example, online bullying, for example, ito yung mga kakaharapin natin ngayong disciplinary cases. At kailangan ng estudyante nating ma-feel, they should be able to feel that they are safe in the virtual environment. Majority of Filipinos are worried about contracting COVID-19. If you look at the data, pinaka-worried tayong mga Pilipino. And alam naman natin siguro yung dahilan, tayo na nga yung epicenter of the new epicenter, the new hotspot of COVID-19 in Southeast Asia. Worried na worried. Lahat tayo. Okay? So ang tanong, dahil dito, can we just survive COVID-19 first? Pwede ba yun muna yung intindihin natin? Pwede bang ang BulSU, yun muna yung intindihin? Survive COVID-19? May iba't iba pong argumento. There are different arguments about this. When we go back to school, everything will be different. And it must be different. We need to ask ourselves the fundamental question, what is the purpose of education? Education is the food of the mind. It will give us the nourishment we need to cope with the situation. I know that it is difficult to learn when the stomach is hungry, when the stomach is empty. But if both mind and stomach are empty, the result is death by famishment and by ignorance. Double dead po tayo. That's what the term I'd like to use, double dead. Hungry na yung ating sikmura, gutom na yung ating sikmura, gutom pa ang ating isipan. I understand that we need to fight starvation, but we can't do that without compromising learning. We need to feed both our stomachs and our minds. Stop eating and we will die, yes. But stop eating and learning, we will die twice. So we need to embrace the learning everywhere, anytime. Schools are there to provide you access. Kung ano man yung paraan na gagawin nila, antayin lang natin, abangan lang natin. Even if you're saying wala kang pang tuition fee, wala kang pang baon, wala kang pambili, as I've said, CHED addresses all schools that they should be flexible in their instructional delivery. Sorry po, sabihin ng BulSU, pinapataas mo yung expectation sa mga estudyante. Kailangan din po natin yun eh. Kailangan talaga natin flexible learning. Kami din po sa private schools, that's what we do now. So, para sa mga mag-aaral na nandyan, so as I've said, embrace learning everywhere and anytime. But we need to ensure that learning continues in spite of massive disruptions. We need to ensure that education and research can continue in the face of the challenging times because learning knows no boundaries. If it is the students who resist, kung kayong mga mag-aaral ang aayaw, choice nyo yan. What matters most is that you have been provided by the school with the necessary instructional support. Sabi nga ni President Duterte noon, sabi niya, kung di mo gustong mag-study, mag-cellphone ka na lang para yung cellphone mo na lang ang mag-graduate. Nandiyan ang BulSU eh. Bibigyan kayo ng access to quality education. Don't resist it. Okay? Do not sacrifice learning. Fight starvation without compromising learning. Okay? So, how do we get ready for the next normal? Isa ito sa aking task this afternoon. And there are a lot of literatures now saying that there are different ways, an array, a plethora of ways by which we can navigate the next normal in education. For example, Toscano is saying, una, we need to ensure that safety is our priority. Privacy, safety, security, and digital well-being are our top concerns. We need to protect ourselves from digital fatigue. Kaya yung lecture ngayon dapat hindi more than 2 hours. Yun ang daw ang kakayanin natin. Otherwise, we'll suffer from digital fatigue. Kailangan natin ng break from time to time. So we need to have a break from too much exposure to computer radiation, for example. Kailangan natin yun. Yun ang form of safety natin. We feel more secure now kasi nasa bahay tayo. But there are a lot of sources of stress or stresses or a lot of stressors out there. Pag humarap ka lang sa computer, binuksan mo yung social media habang nag-aaral ka, may stress ka lang. And how do you deal with that? I think yung sessioning nyo nung nakaraan with the psychologist from UST, nabigyan kayo ng tips yung mga mag-aaral natin and how you're going to deal with that. The next is flexibility, adaptability, and empathy, which are all essential skills in navigating uncertain times. Toscano is saying that as we navigate the intersection of the physical and digital spheres in our lives, the next normal is calling us to develop essential skills that can help us to adapt and thrive and survive in an uncertain future. And one thing that the pandemic has taught and reminded us all is to have the skills of flexibility, adaptability, and empathy to face the unknown. And these skills are not learned and mastered overnight. Kakailanganin nyo itong i-develop, i-hone among yourselves. They are developed over time. And the time is, ngayon, the time makes things difficult. The timing makes things difficult, but we can all do this if we have the will. For the teachers out there, giving the students more opportunity to practice and develop these skills is one way of preparing them for the students' lives beyond the physical or virtual walls of the classroom. Now you've heard about growth mindset, appreciation of mistakes, and being resilient, which are very important life lessons that we can impart to our students at this time of the pandemic. We should teach rather our students to empathize with other people. And you students should also be teaching other students to empathize with others and challenge everyone to help other members of the society to make this next normal more bearable, more tolerable, especially for those who are in the margin of the society. Sabi nga ni Vice President Lenny, lalo na yung mga nasa laylayan. We need to be optimistic about how the next normal can change our lives. And I said this earlier a couple of times. Keep learning from home. School is there at home. And you need to maintain connection. No? Wag mawawala, wag madi-disconnect. Build, not burn bridges. Do not isolate yourselves because you have a personal learning space. Social or physical distancing is not being alone. Personal learning space does not mean you are learning alone. In fact, the World Wide Web and through the social media, our network widens. Talk to your teachers and classmates, to career counselors. Lahat nga ngayon mas mabait eh. Everyone is kinder these days. Everyone is willing to lift others up. And Martinez is saying that one way to navigate the next normal is for you to be self-directed. Students should be able to develop the ability to direct their own learning. You have to set goals, monitor your progress, and reflect on your own strengths and areas for improvement. And Martinez is also saying that you have to keep an academic mindset. Ano ba yung academic mindset? You have a strong belief in yourself. You should trust your ability and believe that hard work will pay off. So you will persist to overcome obstacles. There have been studies saying na nagdi-dwindle yung course persistence ng isang estudyante habang tumatagal. Halimbawa sa isang klase, let's say English class online. Middle of the term, bumababa yung kanyang persistence o enthusiasm. Kailangan yung makabawi. Kailangan yung ibalik yung drive, that passion, that energy, that urge for learning. Otherwise, masasayang yung efforts ninyo. Okay? You need to see the relevance of your schoolwork to the real world and your future success. This means that you have to maintain your being a scholar. Hindi po yung scholar na nag-enjoy ng tuition fee discounts. Ha? When I say scholar, even in the virtual space, you need to think, speak, and act like a true university scholar. That is what a university student should be, a true scholar in action, in words, and in the way you speak, in the way you write emails, in the way you write messages on the chat box. Hindi anything goes there. You have to observe decorum, netiquette. Kailangan din natin yun kahit na nasa virtual space tayo, which is borderless. That is also a sign of being a scholar. We need to embrace new education approaches that will enable education to continue. At first, I'm sure students out there will feel resistance. Maybe you will resist school policies, rules and regulations. Ngayon, hindi na ipagbawal ang hair color. Kasi nasa virtual learning naman. Yan ang rant ng mga estudyante sa private schools like UST. Gusto nila, payagan silang magkaroon ng hair color. O, may resistance, pero hindi po pwede pa rin. Okay? Meron pa rin kayong kailangang sundin na batas o polisiya ng eskwelahan. Okay? But you need to embrace new education approaches like virtual mode of instruction. Okay? Iba na. Hindi ka po pwedeng, ayoko ng online. You can't resist that because as I've said, it's the way forward. We need to be open to new ways of measuring achievements and successes. If you are used to traditional paper and pencil tests, change your perspectives, mga estudyante. Online learning is not about quizzes and tests. Online learning is not about online recitation. Online learning is about outcomes as well. It's about what you do with what you know. It's about what you can creatively do with the contents or information in front of you. And by the same token, students, you out there will have to build up a character of interdependence, of discipline, and responsibility. Kamalyuddin in 2020 saying, we need to unlearn what we have always known. Row of desk, wala na yan. Heavy bags, mass lectures, public exams, and broken parent-teacher communication, gone. Unlearn those, and we can establish the next normal of education. How much time do I have po? I still have time. Okay, malapit na po. All right, continue lang po. Okay. BulSUan in 2020 saying that we need to establish new and positive habits, change daily routines. Mga bata, maligo rin kayo ha, kahit nasa online class kayo. Even if you are just attending online classes, hindi yung pagbangon from the bed straight to the computer. Change your bad habits of not taking a bath. Nasanay kayo sa ECQ na bearded, na mahaba ang buhok, you look like hermits or herbitanios. Change the bad habits ngayong tapos na ang ECQ days. Smell good and look good in front of the camera. Sana I still look fresh. May ilaw kasi sa harap ko na mainit para medyo maganda-ganda yung aking lighting eh. We need to learn new ways of doing things. We need to try other note-taking strategies. Baka ngayon hindi na notebook ang note-taking ninyo, hindi na papel, hindi na ballpen. Doon na mismo sa laptop. May notes saan. Okay? You read PDFs, not anymore printed books. Wala nang Xerox ngayon. Hindi ka nga lalabas para magpa-Xerox eh. So we need to learn new ways of doing things. You try attending classes with microphones. You try attending classes with headphones. I'm sure matututunan din natin yan. And if we consider what life was like before COVID-19 and compare that with our experience during isolation, we can start to re-inhabit our possible new lives and new selves. And with a little bit of reflection, planning, and action, we can come out of the COVID-19 experience with a more adaptive mindset. The point here is that not to get stuck, but to keep working through. Pag nasaktan ka, nag-break kayo ng boyfriend mo or girlfriend mo, mag-move on ka after a month. Tama na yung isang linggo o isang buwan. Move on. So parang ganito lang din yun. We should not get stuck, but to keep working through towards what the future may bring, even if only tomorrow with little steps and little plans. While we may not be all in this together, given the extreme loss some of us have experienced, we can still empathize, share their grief, and assist them. Sa mga schools naman, how do we navigate the next normal? Do we just join or change the conversation? Makikisali lang ba tayo sa usapan? I'd like to think that the winning schools will be ahead of the game. Like BulSUan State University. You don't just join the conversation. You change the conversation as a premier state university in Bulacan. For example, what does UP do? The University of the Philippines will no longer go back to the traditional modes of teaching and learning, but they're open to new prospects, new platforms, and possibilities of teaching and learning. Now they invite visiting professors who in the past have hesitated to accept UP's invitation dahil hindi nila kaya. And ngayon, you don't have to fly in prominent lecturers and academics abroad. Pwede nang katulad nito. You can invite them. Noted literary authors, artists, scientists, researchers, and practitioners to interact with students in virtual class sessions. Hindi na problema ang faculty ngayon. Pwede na nga tayo mag-invite kahit libre na i-team teach virtually. That's also possible. Using uploaded plays, music videos, artworks, panel discussions, modular courses. This is what UP is gonna be doing. Sa UST naman, now we are implementing the enriched visual mode of instruction. So, nag-iba na rin yung aming way of delivering instruction. So, we now adhere to the enriched virtual mode. But what about BulSUan State University? I'm sure the university has something to offer to all its learners. And I've seen this sa website, no? Madami nang ginagawa ngayong hakbang o pamamaraan ang paaralan para ihanda ang lahat sa next normal o sa pagsisimula ng bagong taong aralan or the new academic year or the new school year. So I'd like to think that BulSUan State University has its own strategy to be ahead of the game. I am sure BulSU would not want to be left behind. So the good thing about this pandemic is that, according to Father Miranda, our Secretary General in UST, true education is the spark that sets ablaze the desire to succeed, hurdles any form of obstructions along the path of success, and sees the future as bright. And if there is one positive contribution the pandemic has offered us, it has left us with the only choice of trying to break from the old framework of education, to unshackle ourselves from the old framework of education, to break free from what we are used to realize that there are a lot of ways, many pathways to learning. Hindi lang face-to-face classroom interaction ang paraan ng pagkatuto. There are other ways. Now, what to do with changes? Our students out there should be change embracer. Since time immemorial, we have always believed that the only constant thing in this world is change. And the next normal is about change. It's a huge change at that. Be a game changer. Be someone that effects a significant shift in the current manner of doing or thinking about something. If online learning is the name of the game, what do you have to offer to the game? The world of basketball is now different because of Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. The world of boxing is now different because of Manny Pacquiao. So let's not make education a victim of the pandemic forever. If you feel that you cannot be an active member of an extracurricular organization, you must be wrong. Kahit online ang extracurricular activities ngayon, I'm telling you that will work. You just have to think creatively how you're going to do that. You need to do something because you can still do a lot. Perhaps even a lot more now that we are in the virtual space. Hindi na kayo manghihiram ng room. Hindi na kayo magpapaalam, manghiram ng gym, for example. And you can do other and a lot of extracurricular activities in the virtual space. PE, I mentioned this something earlier. Change your perspective about PE. PE is not just about physical activities. PE is more holistic than what you imagine it was. Mag-iiba na rin ang PE classes natin ngayon, I tell you. You also have to be gear changer. Adjust your speed when necessary and slow down when you have to. If you feel you are tired because of overwhelming academic demands or pressures, change gear. Relax. Rest. Join the lunch ng family. No? Manood ng movies with them, with Netflix shows with them. Hindi naman kinakailangan the whole day kang nandyan in front of the laptop. When you have enough momentum, change gear again. accelerate until you reach the finish line. And be an empowered learner. And when I say empowered, that's both empowered and educated. If you are both empowered and educated, then you can make the right choices. Para naman sa mga guro natin, para saan pa ba tayo ngayong panahong ito? What are we for in this day and age? We also need to change. We need to change what we teach. Too much of the content has become irrelevant. It makes no sense to teach the same facts every year, year after year. Students can get all this information quicker via Google. Also, we shouldn't focus on skills that machines can do better and transfer. Kaya sa online learning, we only choose the most essential, the minimum essential skills, which we feel are the most important to hone among the learners. There is also a need for us to change how we teach. It makes no sense to stand at the front of the room lecturing or transferring facts when students don't automatically listen or engage. Sure, we can try to force engagement, but what does that achieve? Lalo pa ngayon, we are uncertain whether yung mga estudyanteng nakikinig sa atin ay nakikinig talaga. We have no way of finding out. Nakikita natin sila sa monitor, but we have no way of knowing na talagang nakikinig sila. And there's also a need for us to change when we teach. A 2-hour class, for example, every week at a fixed time, that might not work anymore. The digital world offers so many more opportunities to interact with students. Can't we at least experiment with different formats? Eh, maaaring ang tanong sa atin ng mga estudyante natin o tanong yung mga bata na nandyan, gaano katagal ba yung online class ko? There is no definite time allotment for an online class. The principle is that in online learning, time is variable, but learning is constant. Again, time is variable, and the only constant is learning. Regardless kung gaano man kahaba yung klase nyo. Okay? So we need to swing, I'm almost done, the pendulum to the other side. Kailangan nating magbago talaga ng pananaw ngayong mga panahong ito. Now that everything, all these is rather in everything that is happening with all these disruptions and hula baloos, we should be swinging the pendulum to the other side, and we should also make sure that yes, we're apart, but we are together. Napakagandang mga binitawang salita, no, ni Evans. So while we can no longer embrace each other, together we can embrace the next normal. Magkakalayo man tayo, sabi nga, we are apart, but we are together. So, we need to do but just embrace the next normal. And to embrace something is sometimes painful. To embrace the fact that someone has left you, biniwanan ka ng boyfriend mo or girlfriend mo, it leaves a deep wound or a scar. And this is no normal. There is no normal to go back to. And therefore, we have to start creating a next one. It may be a different one, but I am sure you will get used to it in no time. The Conversation 2020 saying, surviving a global pandemic, both physically and emotionally, is the scar that we should wear proudly. Parang yung mga nanay na na-cesarean, hindi daw dapat ikinakahiya yung sugat, yung scar caused by cesarean section, because it is the scar that we should wear proudly, revealing the injury that has both healed and shaped us. Until then, our bodies must continue dancing our new awkward dance. And I'm sure we'll be able to dance to a new tune in no time. Sabi nga ni Arnold Clavio, kung siya ngayon unang nagsabi noon, I'm not sure, COVID ka lang, Pinoy ako. The coronavirus continues to evolve, and so must we. We need to come forth gradually into being, to develop, to undergo evolution, to gradually change our opinions or beliefs and ways of thinking, to develop a certain process of evolution to a different adaptive state or condition. And only then can we embrace the next normal. We need to brave the next normal in education. It's the only way. And to brave the next normal means to face it head on, to face it with our heads held up high, and to face it with our heads and hearts in their proper places. That's the only way. We just need to brave the next normal in education. And that would be all. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bernardo, for sharing with us the different shifts we need to embrace in this next normal, be it shift in spaces, shift in roles and responsibilities, and shift in learning modalities. Thank you for shedding light for us to not just gradually cope with these changes, but be game changers ourselves. I am very sure that your former mentors you mentioned earlier are very proud to have seen their former student share his expertise, especially at a time like this when educational sharing is highly valued. In a bit, we will be entertaining questions from our webinar attendees. So please send us your queries so we can start lining them up. In the meantime, let us watch an intermission number from our very own Lahing Kayumanggi dance troupe. Okay, good afternoon once again. We have gathered here some questions for our guest lecturer, and I'll be reading some of the questions already submitted. Let's start off with this one. How do we embrace the next normal if we face problems such as financially, socially, and emotionally at the same time? Yes, we are willing to learn. How about those who are not privileged students and who are really needy at this time? This is a question from Jack Richard of BS Ed PLE 3C Bustas Campus.
It's a very difficult question to address kasi huge yung nire-require niya, na at malalim yung pinaguhugutan nung katanungan, which I perfectly understand because as I've said, many of our students these days are in a very difficult situation. Kaya kanina kung mapapansin, kung mare-recall niyo, I said something about unequal access to education. Yes, gusto naming matuto pero hirap kami ngayon sa buhay. Nawalan ang tatay ko, ang nanay ko ng trabaho. I have no choice but to take, for example, the leave of absence o huminto ng matagal sa pag-aaral. Ang masasagot ko lang doon, for example, from the point of view of the educational institution like BulSUan State University, if the resources would allow, I am sure that the institution would provide anything that it could para sa mga estudyante. If I may just share, for example, the experience sa UST. While alam ko iba ang UST, iba ang charter niyan, iba ang BulSUan State University. But for us, for example, sa UST, we did not spend a lot para sa pocket Wi-Fi's ng mga estudyante. Instead, we partner with organizations and din yung mga tinap namin yung mga alumni namin, na nag-donate ng certain amount para makapag-provide kami ng pocket Wi-Fi's dun sa mga estudyante na nangangailangan. I'm not sure if the university's resources would allow that, but what I am sure of is that the university is going to think of ways on how it could reach out to all the students who are in most need these days. Katulad nga nung sinabi ko kanina, ang Commission on Higher Education, may quote-unquote tall order yan that we need to be flexible in order to address the three types or categories of learners. Those with stable internet connection, those with less stable internet connection, and those who have no connection at all. And I am sure that every academic unit in BulSUan State University is doing its best to provide quality instruction via flexible modality. Mahirap po yun on the part of the school, but I am sure that BulSU is going to do something about that. So isa po yun sa paraan para ma-ease yung dinadalang burdens, yung dinadalang hirap ng ating mga magulang at mga mag-aaral ngayon, lalong-lalo na po yung nasa public sector. I understand it's not easy to weather this storm. Wala po akong sinabing madali ito at hindi ko rin sinabi na madaling mag-aral habang nagugutom. Kaya lang po ang sinabi ko lang kanina, my point is we can still learn. We fight starvation without compromising learning, because if our stomachs are empty and our minds are empty, then we'll die twice. So marami naman pong success stories, 'di ba, na marinig natin na nagmula sa hirap na nakatapos ng pag-aaral through the support provided by the school and its stakeholders and probably other people who have kind hearts na pwedeng tumulong sa atin. So I'm not sure if I answered the question, but I'm just coming from that perspective na the educational institution challenge na ulit ang BSU that should be able to provide access somehow to instruction, to education, to learning dun sa mga batang nangangailangan.
All right, thank you. I hope that was answered. And
Hopefully.
hopefully, another question here was submitted by Daryl Christian Oy. How about the skill-based courses? For example, electrical. How can we learn without the supervision of professors?
It's not completely without the supervision of the professors. In fact, marami na po ngayong virtual laboratories. I'm sure you will say it's not going to work as well as the real teaching and learning environment. But for now, we have no choice but to opt for that, no? Yung virtual laboratories, for example. Hindi na rin po kasi ngayon pwede pa mag-practicum, for example, yung mga nangangailangan to go to those programs that require practicum outside. We need to rethink about our practicum activities in such a way na iba lang yung delivery but the same skills are honed, the same skills are taught, the same skills are developed. And I said earlier, I quoted from our Secretary General na may ibang pathways for learning. I know it's gonna be expensive. Medyo magastos din po yun, yung virtual laboratories. But that's the way to go. For now, ito po yung kailangan natin. And therefore, we need to invest. Ngayon, isa rin po sa nagiging misconception is that when we talk about investment, parang school lang ang dapat na mag-invest. Sa tingin ko po, it's both the learners and the school. Kailangan po magkaroon din tayo ng investment. Halimbawa po, wala kang stable internet connection ngayon. Oo, sige, for the meantime. Pero time will come siguro if you can save something para mag-purchase ng or mag-subscribe to a more stable internet connection. That's a form of investment. Hindi rin naman po natin dapat iasa lahat sa eskwelahan. Okay? It's a shared responsibility. But I know malaki ang responsibility ng state universities, ng state-run colleges. But we, learners, and our parents also have their own fair share. Because as I've said, the teaching, learning process, the education process is a shared responsibility. So may iba po tayong options. Mahirap na mag-practicum, mahirap na gumawa ng, let's say, mag-produce ng, let's say, robotics, no? Tapos wala ka naman sa laboratory. Paano yun? But for the meantime, siguro, a virtual laboratory we do, and if the situation would allow, in case no, the situation gets better, pwede naman po tayong mag-blended learning. May combination ng face-to-face with, of course, precautionary measures na i-observe, coupled with remote instruction. That way, there's still learning that takes place. Hindi po yung completely wala. Yun po yung aking take on the matter.
I think the answer has already shed light to almost the same question here. How can we fill in the gap of between academe and industry if OJTs are suspended? So here's another question. Ano po pwedeng gawin ng students if hindi talaga ready sa blended learning? Kasi sir, you have mentioned earlier about blended learning in exchange of OJTs or virtual, what do you call those? Basta info. Advisable ba na wag na lang daw mag-enroll?
I don't think we can park education. I don't think we can set aside education. As it is, education is a continuous process. Parang Miss Universe yung sagot ko, no? Right? I don't think we can park it now. No matter how difficult it is, sa education, isa sa mga tinuturo sa atin, no, sa foundations of education or sa education courses as a whole, yung intrinsic motivation Kailangan magmula sa atin yun. Ganito na nga yung situation natin, hahayaan pa ba natin na malugbok tayo? We have to do something about that. If you feel that you're not ready, then do something to be ready. There is no way out of this pandemic but to face it head on, but to brave it. Otherwise, you lose. Sabi nga, di ba, COVID-19 ka lang, Pinoy ako. And we Pinoys never gave up. We never give up. Pliant like a bamboo. No matter what the situation is, if we fall 8 times, we are able to get up 9 times. That's how resilient Filipinos are. Tayo pa ba? Di ba? So kung feel mo hindi ka ready, I would understand that. Kaya nga kanina ang suggestion ko, siguro yung unang weeks ng classes, first 2 weeks, for example, it's preparing the learners for a different kind of learning environment. Wag po muna tayo sigurong magturo ng content. Rather, we teach our students life skills to survive this, to survive the stressors brought about by the pandemic, to survive all the problems na hindi naman siguro yung problems, but or survive completely, no, to ease lang yung anxiety ng mga estudyante. I think we can perfectly do that. As teachers, yung first 2 weeks ng classes, hindi mo na real classes, yung liminal space ng mga estudyante because they are traveling from one point of their lives to another. So mahalaga yung liminal space na yon na pumasok ang teacher to that space para ma-ensure lang that the students will be able to cope and with and tackle the demands of the next academic year. Full support ang kailangan, but of course the initiative and the drive must come from the learners. Kung wala kasi yun, kung hindi kayo tutulungan ng ibang tao if in the first place hindi nyo muna tutulungan ng sarili nyo, you have to be ready for it because there is no way out, just to face it head on. And there are support groups, mga career counselors ng university, the school itself, the teachers, all your classmates, and as I've said, your parents are all there to give you full support. Ano pa ang hindi nyo kakayanin kung nandyan na lahat yung kailangan ninyo? That's my answer to that question.
All right, sir. I think the answer to this question is already implied in your just previously given answer. But here's a question that perhaps trying to seek for your more specific response to this. What's your stand on academic freeze issue?
Actually, may ka-chat ako ngayon, hindi ko nasasabihin kung sino, no, na meron nga daw na ang BulSUans ay gusto ng academic freeze. But I think the university has aligned subjects, no? Nag-realign, nag-curriculum review, baka nga nag-revamp or curricular overhaul, no? Maybe I mentioned earlier, baka yung mga usual na group activities, mga collaborative learning activities, although may iba't ibang perspective dyan. Sabi sa online space, hindi na yan pwede. Actually, pwede. Magagawa ng paraan. No? There are different ways of doing collaboration in the virtual space. So, hindi pwedeng completely alisin natin yan from the picture. Na to stop because the world has stopped, I don't think it's the way forward. No? Yung nakaraan during towards the end of the term or the school year, ang naging issue is that mass promotion. All students wanted to opted for or clamored for mass promotion. Non-graded ang lahat, wag nang bigyan ng grades. But there are schools that differed and may dissenting opinion like us. We still gave numerical grades. However, yung mga hindi nakakope sa demands ng coursework, we gave the students a grade of INP or in progress. So what we did was to give them until December to complete the grade. It's not an incomplete grade but INP or in progress para magkaroon sila ng enough time, no, to cope with the demands of the course, to comply with the requirements of the course. At hindi naghinto ang buhay. Hindi namin sinira ang eskwelahan. Hindi kami tumigil just because there is pandemic. No? So to stand still just because there is an ongoing pandemic, that only shows yung kung sorry, I might be politically incorrect, but this is just my personal view on the matter. No, to freeze is to not to do something at all when in fact there are other options. Siguro sa mga kabataan ngayon, ang napapansin ko lang is that they are not open to other options. Because there are other ways of doing things. There are other ways of looking at things. We just need to use a different pair of eyes in order to see what these options are. Again, this is just a personal take on it. I might be politically incorrect. I might be politically wrong. But I think I'm entitled to my own opinion. So I think life goes on because we can still do something about all these.
Okay, thank you, sir. There is a question here that perhaps trying to seek for a more practical answer. This question is from Christine Alentahan. Good afternoon po, sir. Here's my question po. Do you think online education is more conducive to cheating? Perhaps from the term conducive to learning, is it more conducive to cheating? If so, paano po kaya ito i-address and masosolusyonan?
Ang sagot ko lang po dyan usually is that we cannot force students not to teach. We can only teach them to be honest. No matter where you are, whether you are in the virtual classroom or in the physical classroom, there are temptations para mangopya o para gumawa ng, para how do you call that? To commit academic dishonesty wherever you are. Nandyan yung temptation eh. But schools can only teach students the value of honesty. Whatever we do, kahit na may Turnitin ka dyan, may plagiarism checker ka dyan, meron kang respondus lockdown para makontrol yung pag-cheat, gagawa at gagawa ng paraan ng ibang mga estudyante. That's a reality, no? But it's not a sweeping generalization. Hindi ko sinasabing lahat, no? But we can only do this much. While nandyan yung mga softwares na yan, for example, to discourage students from cheating, kung gusto pa rin talaga nila, then we can't do anything about it, but to teach them the value of honesty.
All right, sir, last question. This is from Paul Mark Valerio. Hi, sir. Here is my question. If the pandemic is over, is it possible that it will return back to normal or at least a pre-normal state of life?
I don't think we're going to go back to completely, go back to our old selves and our old lives. There will always be changes, as I mentioned earlier. Kahit natapos na yung pandemic, I don't think we can park online or remote learning. In fact, even before the pandemic, that's the in thing across the globe. Tayo lang medyo ang nahuhuli, and we know why. We are in a third world. We are a third world country. Okay, I don't think sa isang iglap babalik yung nakaraan. I don't think it's gonna happen. There will always be changes. And I'd like to think that our lives after the pandemic is a fusion of our old and new lives, hence next normals.
All right, thank you, sir. I think that will be all as far as questions raised or concerned. Now, we are truly honored to have been graced by our very competent yet very humble lecturer, Dr. Alejandro S. Bernardo. And it is with my great joy and honor to award the certificate of recognition to you, sir, to allow me to read the citation. All right. Republic of the Philippines, Bulacan State University, City of Malolos, Bulacan, presents this certificate of recognition to Dr. Alejandro S. Bernardo for sharing his invaluable time and expertise as resource speaker in the BulSU webinar series for students Getting Ready, Getting Steady, preparing the BulSUans for the new normal, next normal, setup of education, a webinar session entitled Next Normal Ed is for Real on August 12, 2020, signed Dr. Cecilia S. Navasero Gascon, University President.
Thank you for this virtual certificate. That's also part of the next normal.
In as much as we'd like to send you, sir, the physical certificate.
That's perfectly understandable. And I'd like to thank BulSUan State University for inviting me to share my insights this afternoon. My last slide earlier said something about braving the next normal, braving a whole new world. While we can be brave in doing so, we'll be braver if we have God on our side. So with all these, I don't think we should be forgetting the Lord above, because every time we ask that He stay with us, that He be with us, He listens to our prayers. So no matter how difficult the situation is, we can brave the storm, and we can even be braver if God is on our side. So thank you, BulSUan State University, for having me this afternoon.
Right. That was a very touching and inspiring message to end this webinar with. And I hope that sticks to everyone. Before we officially end this webinar with the singing of the BSU March, I would like to leave you with an inspiring quote as well from Mark Twain. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. And the secret of getting started is breaking your overwhelming task into small, manageable tasks and then starting on the first one. Our dear BSU students, this may be our first step to getting ahead amidst this pandemic. And thank you for being with us. May God bless us all.